watching Morning at NTV.
As you set out of your house today, just know that the pump prices I've seen at many of the petrol stations, petrol going for between 3,000 and 700 shillings, and 3,700 shillings and 4,100 shillings. Yet for diesel, goes for 3,800 shillings, and this means that you need to know that you calculate enough fuel that will take you from your house to your workplace. That of course translates to the amount of money that you'll be spending at that petrol station as you set out of your house. A very good morning to you once again. We are coming to you live from Waise near the traffic lights here. This is Stephen Mbide with the traffic and travel update. As you set out from your house driving from Kawempe, Matuga and areas beyond, just know that as you drive towards the traffic lights of Waise, you're going to be delayed for almost between 5 and 10 minutes after the junction, taking you towards the St. Kizito Catholic Church. That side, for you who is coming from that side, you must be well versed with that side of the church. And after crossing the traffic lights, there is less congestion driving towards the Kubiri roundabout or towards Wandegeya or the Winaisa Road as you drive towards that side. And for you who is coming from Nabweru, Nansana and areas beyond, branching off from around the road but popularly known as the Chenabweru, driving towards Waise, also just know that there is also another delay of 5 to 12 minutes before you cross the traffic lights here on that road leading you towards the Kawempe Division Headquarters. That's where you'll be delayed for that particular time. But crossing towards the other side of Kalerwe and Chebando areas, less congestion at this particular moment as you drive past Waise. And coming from the Kalerwe or Chebando, that side, joining Waise here, you also know that there is another between 5 and 8 minutes of your delay time before you cross the traffic lights here. And proceeding towards the other side of Saapro Kagwa Road, for you who is coming from Waise, there is also less congestion. But coming from Saapro Kagwa Road or the northern bypass coming towards Waise, just know that as you drive towards the roundabout at Waise, that's where the big congestion will be. That's where you'll be finding it. And remember, there are so many border riders who are riding recklessly. So if you're a driver, make sure that you drive so carefully, because there are so many people crossing this road and other border riders who, many of them are riding recklessly, and you may end up knocking one of them. Apart from that, if you know you're heading towards the other side of Kawempe and areas beyond, also know that less congestion. There are vehicles moving so smoothly. And that is the traffic and travel update for this particular time. I have to remind you that we were coming to you live from Waise, and this is Stephen Mbide on the traffic and travel information for this particular time with Helen Birawa on camera. Bye bye. I wish you a safe journey.
Now, for a number of you who are actually leaving your house right now, or maybe you're stuck in traffic, you have seen what the traffic update is like as of this morning in Waise, and you might have your child with you, or you have just dropped them off, and each and every single day you have to get them up by 5 a.m. to make sure that by 7:30 you're also on your way to work to make it for 8, depending on what your reporting time is like. And that has an effect on your child's development. Some of you might be putting them in shuttles to ease it and also to make sure you get to work on time. Some are sending their children on their own to school. You might have seen one child or pupil just walking on their own. Others are actually using, in some parts of the country, having to use boats to get from one end to another to be able to attend school. All because education is important, but at what cost will we have this education? Now we're joined in studio by the Executive Director of the Uganda Child Rights Network, and that is Mrs. Stella Ayo Odong. You're most welcome to NTV.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning. I've seen that picture, and it just shocks me, the things we take for granted. What are the effects of this? Just seeing children having to go through that, I can imagine. Look at that. The trauma, and you don't know if the waters are gonna misbehave and become, you know, uncalm and stuff like that. What is the ultimate effect of this?
For a child, children have to be children. For a child to go through that, to get to the place of learning, has an impact, because the child, first of all, gets exhausted even before they get to the place of learning. Two, there's even constant fear, because they're not sure about what will happen in between the time they leave home and the time they get there. So they are permanently anxious. First, the fear of the unknown. Maybe there's a crocodile that will emerge from somewhere. There could be a wave that will come. And just speaking to this picture, there could also be rain that could come suddenly, and then what will happen? Now, when you're permanently anxious or constantly anxious, you get to the learning environment. Learning does not take place, because then the child is now thinking about when it's time to get back home. They no longer concentrate. So when it gets to around like 4:30, these days children leave school at 5. When it gets to 5, concentration ceases to happen. Even when the teachers try to push the classes to 6, concentration does not happen, so learning does not take place. So the child's focus now is on how they'll move from the school back home. So then learning does not happen, and then the development of the child is hampered. Yeah.
So as we talk about the children that have to get up, because I have personally a neighbor, every time that I'm leaving the house, the school shuttle is already there to pick up the child. That's about 5:20. Yes, so you wonder, how does this child stay awake the entire day, be able to learn, get home, once again in traffic, because we do know that maybe if you stay in the area of Ntinda, they're going to pick every child around Ntinda, Chiwatule, Najera, Chira, because it's the entire, so that round, and then bring them to school. And then they have to go through the entire round again
when they're dropping them home. And they're dropping them back. Even before you get to them being picked up, by the time the child is supposed to be picked up at 5:30, they're waking the child up at 4. And remember, the child got probably back home probably 8:30, finishing with homework. There's usually loads of homework for them to do, so they finish homework by 10. So between 10 and 4, the child only has less than 6 hours of sleep. And yet, ideally, a child, a preteen, an adolescent child between the age of 11 and 18 should have between 9 to 11 hours of sleep. Babies, you know, they sleep a lot. Many times we take it for granted, but they actually should sleep 16 to 18 hours, not in one go. They can sleep 12 hours, and then during
those little naps that they have.
But the total amount should come to about, the aggregated amount should come to about 16 to 18 hours. And then the toddlers, the walking and toddlers should do about 11 to 14 hours. Now, this child who wakes up at 4 goes through the hassle of picking all the other kids. You know, when your fathers, they pick you first and then they drop you last. So this child again goes through that anxiety of how to get to school, what time they'll get to school. First of all, they are worried about when they're going to finish their homework. And many times you find children doing homework in the taxi, doing homework in the cars. Some of us who work late, you'll find your child doing homework in the office. All that impacts on the development of the child. In the future, then the child gets tired of this thing called education. You realize many of them waking up is just, it's a nightmare. And they hate school. When you talk to many of them and say, what is the experience in school? They hate school. And now the school environment has also changed so much. There is very little time for co-curricular activities. A lot of the focus is on academics. And I think that is also one of the reasons why they want classes to open early. They start teaching at about 5:30 or 6. At the latest 6, if your child is late, 6 o'clock, the lessons start. Now, the Minister of Education has guidelines. Classes should start at 8. But you find that some schools start classes at 6. And we're not blaming the regulator, which is Minister of Education. The regulations are there. Now, what has caused this is probably the privatization of education.
Right.
And the focus on gains and profits. The more your school shines out, the better for you. Now, that is on the side of the proprietor. Now, on the side of the parents, we're also pressured. We want the child to get the 4. And I keep telling parents, it's not about 4. And I tell my kids, the marks don't define you. Whether you get 4 or you get 11, you are my child. And I know you can do better. The marks will never define you. You're better than 11. You're better than the 13 or 15 that they're saying that you will get. And 4 should not be the reason I should push you to get a 4.
You've broken down the hours that these children need to rest, depending on their age. And many will say that as much as my child has to wake up at 4 a.m. and they're picked up at 5:30, for example, for them to be in school at 6 a.m., they sleep early.
What is early? What is early?
And I make, for example, a parent will say, I make sure that they hit 10 hours of sleep. Yeah. For example, if my child has to wake up at 4 a.m., I have to make sure that maybe by 7 they're done and out, you know. Is that okay? If someone says that I put my children to sleep early and so they wake up early.
They wake up early. Well, again, it's look at the normal times. Let's talk about the normal time that activity starts. Talk about yourself. You struggle waking up at 4. Whether you sleep at 8, whether you sleep at 7, waking up at the wee hours of the morning is really, really a struggle. And then you get up and the whole day you're grumpy. It's not because you've not had enough sleep. It's because of the hour of waking up. The body psychology, the body system actually adapts to when it's dark, apart from those countries that have those awkward weather patterns and climate patterns. You actually get impacted upon. You get grumpy, you're angry, and so it does impact on them, even if they sleep early. So 10 hours, yes, it's good, but then they need to also consider you push the 10 hours so that the child wakes up at a normal time and feels fresh. And
but what then would be the solution? Because you'd say that if they wake up, for example, at 7 a.m., by the time you get into the road, it's traffic bumper to bumper, like we've seen already in Waise. It's just, you know, bumper to bumper. Traffic is heavy. So what's the solution? Our roads are not any better. And if we don't wake up these children early, they'll be getting to school at 12 noon. So what will they study?
I am a believer of trying out options. Why don't you look out for a school nearby?
Okay.
Why don't you look out for the school nearby? And if you actually hit the road, if you don't put the child through the shuttle business, and you're the one dropping the child, if you hit the road exactly 6 o'clock, meaning you're waking, or maybe 6:30, you're still clear. You'll be able to sail through the traffic and get to the school in good time. My kids went to Aga Khan, and by 6, the latest time we leave the house is 6:30. I wake them up at 6. 6:30, we are on the road. Everything is done, everything is set, so 6:30 we are on the road. And luckily for that system, and I'm not saying because I'm a parent from there, but the system, the classes start at 8. So there's no pressure of 6 a.m. the child has to be in class. The classes start at 8, so there's no pressure. But I'm just saying that you're able to sail through the traffic if you plan your time well. So I think the solution is plan your time well. 2, get
a school nearby.
Okay. It doesn't have to be Aga Khan, it doesn't have to be Kampala parents. Yes, they're giving us the grades, but you can also work with that school and get the grades. And it's not also about the grades.
It's about the learning.
It's about the learning.
Holistic learning.
I think it also brings in the question of the presence of a parent in all of this, which you have sort of highlighted as a parent. Yes, when it comes to selecting the school, location of the school. Now, I did have a conversation with a colleague yesterday, and he was saying that his child who is in kindergarten, preschool, just going to have some time there and learn, they are expecting to have his child in by 7:30 a.m.
What is a preschooler doing at 7:30 a.m. in school?
Exactly. And he said he had to put his foot down and say, I can't bring in my child at 7:30. No. I will bring in my child at 8 because that is what I can be. I know this is the time my child will be active. So the parent knowing their child's pattern and trying to get a school that meets the child's pattern.
Very much so. And moving away from meeting the interest of the educator or the proprietor, because many times as parents we just boil down to what the system has said. You're supposed to be at school at 7:30 and therefore, or you're supposed to be in class by 6 and therefore you have to be in class by 6. And what is the motive? Why should they be in class by 6? So that they start early, they cover the syllabus early. There's a reason why the school term has 3 times. I do not know why the schools are so obsessed with finishing the syllabus in 2 terms.
So they can start revising.
So revising for what?
For the exams.
And then
and you get a 4.
I'm for abolishing primary leaving examinations so that we stop having this pressure on the children, because the early ages of the child are very, very important. 0 to 5, very critical stage of development, and 0 to 9 is even more critical, and yet we see this happening to these young children.
When you say development, what exactly are we pointing out to? Is it the brain development?
We're looking at emotional, we're looking at the physical, we're looking at the cognitive development, we're looking at the brain development. It's the holistic development of the child. That you miss out that stage, or you are in that stage by, for example, keeping the child late, waking up the child, getting a preschooler to school at 7:30. That means they have to wake up at 6. If you live in Mukono, you have, and because your school of choice is, well, let me talk about All Saints Nursery School, you then have to wake up the child at 5, and then look at the preschooler losing all that sleep. So it does impact on their brain development. And later in life, the child is more exhausted. There are certain things they will not like.
Right.
What would the parent have to look out for? Because you mentioned there's the emotional, there's the mental, and there could be signs even just now. Every time the child comes back home, I might be a parent who still uses the shuttle thing because I can't be able to afford to drop my child off myself. So what do I start to look out for to say maybe this is taking a toll on my child?
The child is grumpy, the child is jittery, the child does things haphazardly, like they tend to react to things. They're quite emotionally stressed. You can actually see they cry over small things. Even when the container just drops, the child will burst out in tears. That means the child is already under pressure. Those are some of the signs you should look out for. But again, I don't know whether people actually have looked at the risk of shuttles. The New Vision ran a story of a driver, one of the shuttle drivers, who actually defiled a 5-year-old or 5 or 6-year-old child, and the case is now in court. Some of these shuttle drivers are not professionally prepared to work or to work with these children. For them, it's just a job. Even those attendants, it's just a job. The children, some of them are even scared because of the way they're harassed. You're not in time, I'll slap you if you... So the child, even in that shuttle, is not comfortable. So my message to parents out there is that if you cannot manage or you can't afford to have the child or drop the child yourself, ensure that you know the kind of person you're handing your child, because those are over 4 hours to and from school, and therefore you need to think about how you look at the child, the shuttle, talk to the owners, ensure that you know they are not that you actually the security of the child or the safety and protection of the child is guaranteed as you hand over to the next person.
Let's talk about boarding schools, because then the parents who will say that I still want that good school for my child, so if it means that they have to wake up very early and sleep very late, then let their lives be around a boarding school where the dormitory is here, the classrooms are here, so they can have enough rest in between their days. At what age should children be going to boarding schools? Because you're having parents who are taking their even 4-year-olds to school,
we have nursery boarding schools in Kampala. Nursery boarding schools in Kampala. We're having 1-year-olds being taken to school with a suitcase and handed over to the nanny. We have babies, toddlers being left at the school for overnights because the parents have to do certain jobs that require them to take night shifts, and so they have to have night and day care. But having said that, I think it's circumstances that at times push people to take their children to school. But if you can avoid it, the time that you should take your child to boarding school is in senior 1. For 2 reasons, yes. Senior 1 for 2 reasons. One, that the time between primary and secondary is 7 years, right? Looks like a very long time, but that is the critical time where you'll bond with your child, where you will build a relationship with your child, where you'll see the child grow, where you will even be able to connect with the child. Now, if you take the child away at 3, the child becomes a total stranger. Remember, they spend more than 3 terms in the school. That's about 9 months out of 12 in the year. So you only have 3 months with the child. And remember, we also have the 2 weeks holidays that are not adequate. And you yourself are busy up and down, so you hardly have time to actually connect with this child. And many times, then the child becomes alienated from you. We have had challenges with some children, not many, some children. But I'll tell you that out of, in my other life, I do counseling and therapy, and the majority of the people that I have, let me say out of 10, I could get like about 7 that have their issues emerging from the boarding school. Wow. They're emotional. Some of them end up with generalized anxiety disorder because of the separation and so on.
Wow. So as we wrap this up, bonding between the parent and the child. A number of times parents think, as long as I have paid school fees, I have bought you what you want, you are in school, I am doing what I should as a parent.
It is not materialism.
Yes, what is it exactly? Because as you've mentioned, if my child is in day school for 7 years, but I'm not present as a parent, that still will also have an effect on the child.
Yeah, definitely. When I talk about when the child is in day school, you need to find time, bond, get together, get to know the child, talk to the child. Unfortunately, the generation now is a fast generation that is running to catch time, time at work, rushing to catch up with a side hustle here and there. So we barely have time for the children. And the most important thing, that the gift you can give your child now is time. And the time, valuable time, not cosmetic time. Not cosmetic time, you're on your laptop and say, oh yeah, get there, get onto your iPad and continue talking. No, that is not quality time. Sit, talk to the child, ask the child how the day was, get to play with the child, get to do things that are out of the ordinary. And many of us now have the privilege, I mean, because we work in places like NTV, there could be a driver that takes the children. So because you're looking at your comfort, you then say, oh, let the driver take the child. At times those moments in the vehicle are very, very, very critical moments.
So be creative.
Be creative
about creating time.
Creating time. I'll just share with you my experience again with my little girl. She's now 15. That's my last born. I have 5, so she's 16. And I'm 15, turning 16 this year. So we were driving to school, and then out of nowhere, it was her birthday. So she asks, so mommy, how did you feel when the day I was coming? And I go, okay, but is that question leading to? I said, well, there was a bit of pain. There was a bit of contractions here and there. What do contractions mean? I said, pain in the stomach when you're trying to kick and you're trying to come out. Oh, I've seen that in the cartoon. Did you also go? Oh! So I said, yes, I did. And in my mind, I'm trying to process, okay, so if I was not present for her to bounce that question off me, who was she going to be asking that question? And then she'll build all sort of puzzles in her head, and then the guest can go anywhere. So I think that is just an example. Use every opportunity to bond and build a relationship with the child.
Wow, we have learned quite a bit, especially in the sleep hours that are important for the children. Let's be deliberate. It's not just about, you know, the perfect school. If it means you moving to a nearby, you know, neighborhood for your children, let them have enough sleep for their good. Don't go too far. Thank you so much, Miss Stella Ayo Odong, the Executive Director, Uganda Child Rights Network. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So the hashtag is Morning at NTV. Morning at NTV still continues. Don't go too far.
Play and win every 10 minutes. For every 1,000 you spend, it gives you 1 entry into the jackpot this Sunday.
On MTN, simply dial *165*33#.